Welcome to Bible Study. I'm Chaplain Harold Epley, and I'm glad you're tuning in again this week. We are going to continue our Bible study using the book Dancing in the Aisle, Spiritual Lessons We've Learned from Children, a book that was written by my wife Rochelle Melander and myself a number of years ago. And if you're tuning in today and thinking, does Chaplain always wear that same blue sweater? No, I don't. But actually we're taping back-to-back 2 Bible studies in one day, so I look the same as I did last week. If you're really a good observer, you know that. But let's get going here on this Bible study. It's entitled this week, A Sacred Space. A Sacred Space. And we're going to talk about, well, for children, when children are playing, they like to have that special place maybe where for hide and seek, or place maybe under the dining room table where they can hide. You go back to your childhood and remember there were places that were special to you. In the same way as adults, we need to find special places, and we call them sacred spaces. And so that's what we'll be reflecting on today. Might be a little harder to do if you live in a small apartment or in a room and don't have a lot of places to spread out. But there can continue to be sacred spaces wherever you are, because it's just a matter of envisioning it and taking some time that is special, and by using that time in special ways, it can become sacred to you. So we'll be talking about that, thinking about that, and we're going to start with a brief lesson from the Gospel of Luke. I'm going to read to you from chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. And this is a place in the gospel where Jesus has been out and about. He's been preaching and proclaiming the good news, teaching his disciples, and healing people. He's been very public. He's been out and surrounded by lots of people, as he frequently was. And in verse 15 it says, "But now more than ever, the word about Jesus spread abroad. Many crowds would gather to hear him and to be cured of their diseases. But he would withdraw to deserted places and pray." That 16th verse is just that little sentence, but he would withdraw to deserted places and pray. There's a number of other spots in the Gospels where it's mentioned that Jesus goes away to be by himself. And in that time he prays, he talks to his Father in heaven. Some other familiar stories, the temptation in the wilderness where Jesus is alone for 40 days. And he's fasting in that time and being tempted by Satan and able to resist those temptations. Another place is in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus goes to pray by himself before he is about to be arrested and ultimately crucified, and he knows what lies ahead. So Jesus gives us a model of taking time and finding a place to just get away from it all, whatever our circumstances might be. A place where we can pray, meditate, empty our minds of our worries, and share our troubles with God. So that's the sacred space, and I'm going to read the chapter now. With the story of a young girl named Kimberly. A visit to our house presented 4-year-old Kimberly with an afternoon's refuge from her 3-month-old twin brothers. As soon as she arrived, we offered to take her to the zoo or to the video arcade. Kimberly shook her head and said, "No, thank you. Could I please build a fort instead?" We agreed, helping Kimberly move chairs into a corner of the dining room. We watched as she draped bedspreads and blankets over the chairs so that her fort was well protected. The shell of the fort completed, she spent the next 15 minutes furnishing the inside. She dragged sleeping bags and pillows into her fort and arranged them with great care. She then stocked her fort with a few basic necessities: crayons, paper, books, stuffed animals, and of course snacks. Finally, with a smile, Kimberly announced, "It's finished." "Now what?" we asked. What should we play?" Kimberly replied, "Would you mind if I just played alone? We have so many people in our house." The 4-year-old spent the rest of the afternoon playing by herself in the fort. Periodically, she emerged for reassurance or refills on food. When her mother arrived to take her home, Kimberly was reluctant to leave. "But I love my fort," she wailed. Many of us remember the childhood joy of creating a space of our own. The space might have been a tree house, a secret secluded spot in the backyard, or a little used closet. The space provided a personalized, cozy place to be alone in the midst of a busy household. In that fresh space, we felt safe to think new thoughts. From that new vantage point, we could retreat into a fantasy world, imagine new possibilities, or simply gain perspective on our lives. As adults, we may experience similar feelings when we take a retreat or have the opportunity to spend time in a new place by ourselves. The time away, separate from our busy lives and apart from the mounds of stuff we've accumulated, provides a wonderful space in which to imagine, dream, and think. Many of us build our lives around a work ethic that values what and how much we can produce. Life becomes a treadmill of tasks from which there seems to be no rest. As we become better at our jobs, more tasks are added, and we move faster and faster. We take almost no time out for reflection. And even if we are fortunate to have a space of our own, we often cannot afford the time to enjoy it. Instead, our days are spent paying for it, cleaning it, and managing all the stuff inside it. Living on this treadmill of tasks, we do not know how to step off of it, even for a brief respite. We may brag or complain about how much we work and how little time we have for ourselves. All the while, somewhere deep inside where none of our friends or colleagues can see, we still have a vision of ourselves as a child sitting cross-legged inside that peaceful fort. Somewhere inside, we still yearn for sacred space. We yearn for that time alone when we can release our minds from all the duties and stuff of our lives and imagine new possibilities. When we read the Gospels, we see that our modern lifestyles stand in stark contrast to the way Jesus lived. Many times he worked long hours, preaching, teaching, and healing, surrounded by great masses of people. Yet Jesus also made a regular practice of creating time and space to be alone. He retreated to the mountain or to other lonely places to consult God, to nourish his soul, and to find strength to continue his ministry. Jesus regarded the moments away from the crowds as sacred. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6, verse 6, he taught his disciples to pray alone. We all need sacred spaces. Maybe our lives don't allow us the time to build a fort like Kimberly did. Yet why can't we create a place that can be our sacred space when we need it? We need a place that is free from the demands of work and relationships. We spend much of our adult lives caring and providing for others, spouses, children, parents, friends, clients. Sometimes we need to step away from those who need us, step into the silence, and take time to nourish our hungry souls. Creating a sacred space, a rest stop for both body and soul, doesn't need to be complicated. We could choose a chair as our quiet spot, making certain that we always use it for prayer and reflection. We may outfit a drawer, a basket, or a box with a journal and a Bible and a book of prayers. Or maybe we can put these things into a backpack and hike to a sacred space outside. And if we can begin with that, with creating our own sacred space, maybe we could consider giving ourselves an hour, a day, a weekend on retreat. We don't even need to go anywhere to do it. What we need is uninterrupted time to meditate, connect ourselves to God, and evaluate our lives. We can't do that when we're running on the treadmill, juggling tasks and stuff and relationships. We need a space apart, a place of silence, a sacred space. I hope you're able to find those sacred spaces and sacred times in your life. And I know some people talk about even just taking 30 seconds. Or some people who meditate will take 3 deep breaths. I've learned to do that. Sometimes when I'm getting kind of frenzied and have a lot of things on my mind and I'm worried about stuff and I got to be here and there and do this and that, and I just stop. Just stop. Take 3 deep breaths. Then I resume whatever it was I was doing. I almost always find myself in a much calmer place. Just takes a few seconds. That's a practice. Or just say a simple prayer. Say the Lord's Prayer. Sometimes just Lord be with me sort of prayer. But by doing that, you're taking a break from all the rush and hecticness in your life. And you know, you don't have to be going lots of places to have a hectic life, because our minds are pretty busy, aren't they? And so you could just be sitting in your bed all day and be all wired out, right? All strung out because you're worried about everything. So wherever you are, just take those moments and make them sacred spaces and sacred times. There's a few questions here. Reflect on your childhood. What were some of the sacred spaces in your childhood? Did you have a tree house or a closet where you like to hide, or some place where you get away and be by yourself? Take some time and think about that. Sometimes just revisiting those memories from our childhood can rejuvenate us in our adulthood. If you could plan a perfect spiritual retreat, what would it look like? You might not be able to do that, but just envision in your mind where you would go. Maybe someplace by a lake or in the mountains, or just in a park by yourself. Imagine where that could be, and then go there in your mind. So those are some questions for you to reflect on as you think about your sacred space and your sacred time. That's the lesson for this week. I will be back again next week with another Bible study from Dancing in the Aisle, Spiritual Lessons We've Learned from Children. Hope you have a great week, and I'm glad you tuned in today. Take care.